We're all joining together and holding that.
Well, we are all together because of the appreciation of a man that we all knew. I never had the pleasure of meeting him in person. I used to talk to him on the phone and get lots of letters from Tony Zemaitis. So I'm really honored to have both of you who actually had a chance to work with Tony to tell us a little bit what he was all about. But, I'm going to turn this first over to Keith, because I want you to tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about who was Tony Zemaitis.
Well, thanks for arranging this, Rick. And it's a little bit like looking at the Brady Bunch titles with us in each corner. Danny, can you see me?
No.
No. Yeah. Well, that's probably a good thing. Yeah, if I tell you, Tony Zemaitis was born in 1935, and he got into guitar making. There was an old Tatra 50s acoustic, and he copied that. And then he did a 5-year apprenticeship as a furniture maker, cabinet maker. Coincidentally, a lot of top guitar makers like Dick Knight, Sam Lee, Patrick Eggle, they all started as furniture makers, because of the inlays and things and how wood reacts. Tony went to the army in 1957, and in the 60s, he started making 12-string acoustics, which were very unusual in those days. Not many luthiers attempted that because of the tension involved in the 12 strings. In fact, Tony used to tune them to C and he called them street basses. And Danny has got a very interesting acoustic guitar. Tony was quite an innovator, and he came up with this idea called compensated frets, which predated the Rickenbacker slanted frets. And it was Tony's idea of how if you're a guitarist, you might know that a guitar is never really in tune. It's all to do with the physics, and it's a matter of compromise. And Tony had this idea of making the frets at a slightly slanted angle, and that's like the guitar that Danny's holding.
Oh, nice. The 12. I've got a 6 that's compensated. I have to get that in a minute.
Oh, right.
So Danny, why don't we introduce you and you could talk a little bit about your guitar that you're holding. Danny O'Brien was the master engraver who did all of the intricate type of engraving on these metal front guitars, and we're going to talk about the reason why there were metal front guitars. And on each of the Zemaitis, they had a very special. We have to figure out how to do this. A very kind of special plate, as you can see on Zemaitis. And what was the reason that you started engraving? You said this is how you first started with Tony, right, Danny?
Yeah, a friend of mine was married to a friend of Ann Zemaitis, and he had a guitar made for him, and he decided he wanted something at the top just to make, and I made this silver Z, which I put on it. And Tony sort of got in touch with me afterwards and said, how do you fancy doing some? So we started off with a shield this shape. Mm-hmm. That was.
Can you hold it up just a little bit more so that that's great. Yeah. So that's more like you kind of eventually went into the ones like on this guitar where you had a
diamond.
Yeah. So it started there with the small shield that you made.
Yeah. And then the other guitar you've got there with the fleur-de-lis type top shield.
Yeah.
That was the next one Tony came up with because he thought it was a bit flasher. But when it came, everybody wanted them. It was easier to make diamonds than it was to cut those things out.
Yeah, I know. This was when I first met the first person that I met who played one of these was Gareth Hedges. I don't know if you ever ran into Gareth, Danny. Did he ever stop by?
I seem to have spent all of my career with Tony avoiding meeting anybody that was famous.
Well, Gareth had a wonderful D hole Zemaitis, and it had that really kind of cool shield on it like that. I never saw anything like it. It just blew me away to have this kind of a sound hole. And the accoutrements on these instruments were very different than anything I ever saw. I mean, they really look like a homemade instrument.
Oh yeah, but the thing is, everything was handmade. If you sort of have a look inside, you can see where Tony's been cutting away and doing stuff. It's but then, yeah, nice things. I mean, especially the inlays around the sound hole. I mean, your string has got really quite fancy one.
Well, this one, when I first wanted to get one, I wanted it to be similar to my friend Gareth, and so I ended up with having a similar. His was even more intricate than mine is, but you could see all that wooden inlay that's around the sound hole.
Yeah, it's like a wooden mosaic. If you ever went round to see Tony, he'd always got one pinned to a bit of board building.
So when did you start working with him?
I was trying to think that, to be honest. In the 60s, probably 64, 65. That's when I started doing the engraving with him, and it went from there really. And then the metal front started in 1971 is the earliest, and I've got a photograph of it. I don't know if you can see that.
Let's see. I don't know. Oh yeah,
that's the very first metal front Zemaitis. It's owned by
Tony McPhee.
Tony McPhee of the Groundhogs. And I believe he's still got it. So what that's worth, I don't know.
Now, Keith, because you're a historian of Tony's work, why can you tell us a little bit about why he started doing these unusual things like the metal front guitars?
Oh. Well, he was such an innovator. As I say, he was one of the first luthiers in the UK to do 12 strings. He also did acoustic basses, can you believe? I mean, to my knowledge, nobody in the UK was doing that. I mean, it's just an incredible amount of tension for a neck. And what happened, the pros like Ralph McTell and Spencer Davis started using Tony's acoustics, and he went full-time guitar maker in 65. This is when he lived in Balham, part of London. And he had people like Eric Clapton and George Harrison going around. But the metal front was really part of design for shielding. And don't forget, Tony was one of the first luthiers who also fitted a preamp inside the guitar. And as Danny's already mentioned, you couldn't go into a guitar shop in those days and buy bridges and machine heads and things. Tony had to fabricate all these very fancy bridges he used on his electric guitars. And of course, with Danny's engraving on the front, they just looked spectacular. I mean, as a teenager at school, I just used to see these guitars on top of the pops. And the thing about Tony was he didn't seem to advertise. So if you were clever enough to find him, he'd build you a guitar. And the lovely thing about Tony, one of the lovely things, was he treated you the same as he did like all these rock stars like George Harrison and Eric Clapton. He also made guitars for the postman down the road. And if you visited Tony's workshop, on the back of the door, he had like the 6 guitars he would be building for that year. And if you rang up and tried to get on the list, that was it. I'm sorry, the list, people didn't understand. Yeah, but he was in the Beatles. I'm sorry, that's the 6 for this year. Yeah. And the other story I like about, one of the other stories, I mean, Tony was such an engineer. He built 2 light aircraft in his back garden. So he had a very understanding wife in Anne. But the other thing, Tony wouldn't deal with middlemen. If somebody from a famous guitar player rang up, like McCartney's sound man, and wanted to order a guitar, well, no, tell him to ring me. I don't deal with middlemen.
Well, I put up these. Can you see that, Danny? All the correspondence. This is the way that Tony did his work. Is that somebody had to figure out how to track him down, then they had to write him a letter, and then he would write you back. Now there wasn't any catalogs. There wasn't anything that you could actually see. You had to sort of know what you wanted. And then if you started talking, and what happened was kind of really interesting, because it went something like this. He wrote you back. You're starting to talk, and then he sent you this like little drawing, this tiny little drawing of the guitar. And what it might look like, and he's showing you some of the different things that he would put on there, and then you sent him a deposit, right? And then if you're lucky, then not too long after that, you would find that you would go from here to there. And that's how Tony did it. So this was the first guitar that Tony built me. It was the last of the standards that he built. He said he couldn't afford it anymore. I don't know, Danny, you might be able to answer this better, but I think that Tony knew that there were like 2 classes of people that were interested in him, like rock stars, and then there were, the really, gig musicians who didn't have much money. And I think that Tony tried to make sure that he made his work available. I didn't have a lot of money, and he would always be on the lookout. Maybe there was one coming up for sale. Somebody was getting divorced, and he would say, "Rick," he called me up in the middle of the night. "Rick, you got to get this guitar. You'll never get a bargain like this again." And that was the way that the things came to me, was through the mail, and through this idea of these frantic phone calls in the middle of the night, and these drawings that would come up like this. He would say, "Rick, look, there's this 12-string. You're never going to get a 12-string like this, This is So he would call me up, and he would be sending me this letter, and then before you know it, I would be able to save up the money, because you only had to give him a deposit, and if you were lucky, then a couple of maybe weeks later, that once again that you would have something like this show up, and there it is.
Rick, I used to order guitars when I didn't have any money.
Now, the thing is that's really cool about you, Keith, is that you let's see what we've got here. There is this. That let's talk about this first, okay? All right, I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to. So here we are, young Keith Smart. Tell me about this album here.
Well, that was an album I had at school, and I've still got that album. It's by Ronnie Lane of the Faces, and I really admire his groundbreaking work, because back in the early 70s, he was playing all this sort of almost like English folk crossed with country, crossed with Cajun. And anyway, I obsessed about that guitar on there. And many years later, I actually got it.
Well,
from
luckily,
his brother, Stan. I've known Stan for 10 years. I used to play in London at these get-togethers where we played Ronnie Lane and Faces songs and Small Faces, organised by a friend of mine called John Hellier. And I used to meet Stan there. And Stan used to bring this guitar along, and for 10 years, I used to sort of not pester him, because that's not in my nature. I used to say to him, "Oh, I could give that guitar a really good home," because it was up in his loft. It had cracks in it, and the strings were rusted on it. And after 10 years, he rung up one Friday night. It was the day before my wife and I were going on holiday. We were only going to the New Forest, nowhere too exotic. And he said to me, "Oh, I've decided to sell the guitar, and I want X amount for it." I said, "Oh, well, I'm going on holiday tomorrow. Can I ring you at the weekend?" He said, "No, no." He said, "I'm seeing Paul Weller at the weekend. He'll probably have it." I said, "Well, give me a couple of days." So we arrived at New Forest, and my wife Francine said, "You've got to get that guitar." She said, "Why don't you get a bank loan and and then sell some of your other guitars?" So we went into the local, I won't say what they were called, but I call them Shabby National, and I arranged this bank loan. And they said, "Oh, it's an interesting amount. What's it for?" And I said, "Oh, it's for a guitar." And they said, "A guitar?" Anyway, cut a long story short, Stan wanted paying in cash, being a good old East End type. So I then had to stand at the front of the cashiers while they counted out all this money. And I could see people's eyes behind me popping out their head. And then I had the terrifying walk in the underground car park with a carrier bag full of cash. Anyway, here it is. And when I bought it from Stan, I promised him that I would not put it in a glass case. It's regularly played. It's appeared on albums. It gets played at concerts a lot. I mean, he even played it at the very famous Sidmouth Folk Festival. I did a set of Ronnie songs on there. And it's amazing the amount of well-known musicians, well, legends, that come up and say, "Oh, can I have a picture of that guitar?" In fact, I've got a picture of Danny with it as well. This is what you put in the screen, Rik.
I can't find it yet because you sent it so late. I'm going to try and find it before we're done. But why don't you I have a picture over here with Ronnie and that guitar.
All right, go on then.
And I'm wondering if you would kind of demonstrate what the guitar sounds like today. And also I just wanted to see what it was like for you as a caretaker of something that's kind of precious part of rock and roll history.
Well, it sort of takes on a life of its own. When I play at these events in London mainly, people come up and they want a photograph holding the guitar, which I'm fine for them to have a photo. I mean, I've lost count of the people that have had their photograph taken with it. It's a sort of iconic guitar. And last year, a photographer called Lisa S. Johnson, she had a book out called 108 Rock Stars Guitars. She flew over from America to take some photographs of it for her new book, which is out. It's like an advert. We're going to a break now, folks. The new book, which is out this year. So that's really nice. And what we did, if you may remember, I said that Tony started work as a cabinet maker, making furniture. My wife and I, we've got some of his furniture here. We've got a dresser. So Lisa got us to put the guitar on the dresser. So there's a Zemaitis on a Zemaitis. When Tony built this, if you're a Faces fan, you might remember the Faces appeared on Top of the Pops playing a song called Richmond, and Ronnie Lane was playing a Gretsch Showroad guitar, a resonator. Well, he took that Gretsch to Tony, and Tony took the resonator guitar part and the bridge from it, and he used it as a donor guitar. So this is made from Gretsch parts. The strange thing was, Tony then patched up Ronnie's Gretsch with a piece of plywood, and Ronnie carried on playing it. You see, it's on. You can see photographs of him playing it. He used to love it, the Gretsch Showbro. But this has got a fantastic sound. I mean, it just evokes that. If you've got Faces albums, let me get into shot here. Yeah.
real fine, let it show. Well, I wish that I knew what I know now. When I was younger, I wish that I knew what I know now.
Sounds great. Sounds
You
great.
can see Danny's engraving. He's engraved Ronnie Lane on the truss rod.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Ronnie was a very good customer of Tony, and Tony said to me that Ronnie Lane was the only customer of his that would always pay him more than he asked for. Ronnie said that he used to sell himself short. He didn't charge enough, so Ronnie would always pay more money. And Ronnie and Anne, Tony and Anne used to call Ronnie Mr. Sunshine because he had such a lovely demeanor. He was always happy and always smiling, even when he was fighting MS, you know, and he used to arrive on crutches. He was still always joking and smiling. He had quite a lot of guitars from Tony and basses. I don't know who had the most instruments. It was either George Harrison or Ronnie Lane. I think Ronnie had about 18 in total. I've got a big list of them somewhere. But this is quite an iconic guitar, because if you go onto YouTube, you can find photographs of, footage of Ronnie playing Ooh La La on it, which is the song I just played, and also another song called Debris. And the wonderful thing is, I've even got to know, obviously I knew Stan, Ronnie's brother, but even Ronnie's children, I've got to know them and his various wives and girlfriends. They've all come along to different concerts and things. Some of them have even got up on stage with me.
You were talking about George Harrison. I put up the photo. Can you see it over there of George's collection? Can you tell us anything about that?
I can, Rick. I'm just putting this guitar down. What happened was, we'll probably talk about Ivan the Terrible later, but
oh yes,
that was a 12-string guitar of Eric Clapton's, and George borrowed it and used it on My Sweet Lord, and he loved the sound of Tony's 12 strings so much that he ordered one for himself, and that's what kick-started his collection. You know.
It has the sound. Now, are you tuning? Is that tuned low or is that concert pitch?
That's concert pitch for me. I mean, I either have guitars in concert pitch, or for some Faces songs and other songs, I have open E tuning. But I just like to keep them in concert. But that kick-started George's collection, and he used to order a lot of guitars from Tony, and went around to visit him. I've seen Polaroids of George at Tony and Anne's house, and they've got lovely stories. He used to send them hampers and things at Christmas.
I'm going to bring Danny back in the stream so he can tell us about doing special engravings for George, and he should be popping up right there. Danny. I was watching you off screen, so I knew that you weren't asleep there. I wanted to make sure that you got in here, and because you were telling me earlier about what it was like to do the engravings for George Harrison, and can you talk about that for a minute? I'm gonna pull up one of George's guitars while we talk about it. I'll bring you right back in a minute there, Keith. Just hold on, okay? So can you tell us anything about that, Danny?
Well, most of George's stuff was acoustic anyway, that he bought from Tony. He only ever had one metal front, which I've got a photograph of somewhere. But he wanted the Om symbol, like as on. I've got.
Oh. Yeah,
and all the fret markers Tony used to inlay as little ohms. And I went to George's place once with Tony, and it massive, and you went. There was a cloakroom. You went in. You want to wash your hands, and there was an arm on a red arm on the hot tap and a blue arm on the cold tap. But you know, he I say I did so many for him. Eventually, he's asked Tony to put on it rather than George Harrison. No, not him again.
How many guitars do you think that you worked on for George? Do you remember?
Not really. I used to, mind you, he had a set made for called the Thames Valley Specials, which he gave to four. He gave one to Carl Perkins, one to Joe Brown. I'm not quite sure who the other two went to, but I designed a certificate saying that they were a match set, and printed them off. But
now,
you know, he was a nice man, George.
Now, the guitar that you have in your hands right now, can you tell us a little bit about that, Danny?
Yeah,
you started to, and I interrupted you, I think. Go ahead.
This 12-string was. I actually went to Tony's sometime in November, and he said, I'm struggling a bit. I need some money for Christmas dinner. So I ended up buying this one. It was hanging on the wall. I said, I'll have that one. But it was tuned down when I first got it. But Tony said, if you want to play it at a concert, he did some strengthening on it to make sure the bridge didn't pull off. And, well, what else to say? 1966.
Can you hold it up towards your chin, and then we'll be able to see it a little bit better. There we go. Yeah, so he handmade the rosette like that.
Yeah, that's how it's a rosewood body and a spruce top and an ebony fingerboard, and he built it for himself, which is why it's such a bugger to play, to be honest, because the neck's a little wide.
The neck is wide
for me because Tony had quite big hands, and he built it for himself, and eventually had to sell it because he needed the money.
Well, it seems like that was the problem that Tony would often have. Is like one time he blew out the engine of his Jaguar, and another time he called me up in the middle of the night. He said, "I'm having a fire sale. I gotta get a new motor for my Jag."
Who is go-to for selling stuff?
Well, I don't know why. I mean, I was a folk singer. I didn't have much money at all, but we had a nice friendship. You know, yeah. And I'm gonna see. I want to make sure that people can see the man himself as we're talking about him, and I'm going to bring him right up there on the screen so that we can see that. Okay, and I'm going to take away George, and so there's you know, Tony and his wife.
Yeah, that was taken in Kent after he left London. Yeah, he was such a nice man. And if he liked you, he liked you. If he didn't have any time for you.
Oh, and that looks like a special guitar he must have made. I'm going to bring back.
I think, to be honest, that may have been one that you made for George.
I don't know. We're gonna bring back.
Can you?
There. Okay, we're bringing Keith back in the picture so he could tell us what's going on. All right.
Yep.
Keith. So what about the picture?
You could call me the walking encyclopedia of Zemaitis. I took that photograph. You're right, Danny. It is in the back garden of in Kent. And what it was, that was after Tony stopped making acoustics, and a Japanese collector got in touch, and they came to some arrangement. So he did a one-off acoustic, and he wrote on the label 40th anniversary.
Yeah.
That photograph's a favourite of Anne's, by the way, of her and Tony.
Yeah. It's a beautiful photo. It's
lovely, isn't it? Getting back to the Thames Valley Specials, as Danny said, they were a set of guitars that were unique, that were made for George Harrison's friends. So it was Carl Perkins, Joe Brown, Dave Edmunds, and Alvin Lee of 10 Years After. And just recently, you know, I run the Zemaitis Guitar Club, and just recently Joe Brown has joined and sent some photographs of him with his Thames Valley Special.
And George seemed like he liked the circular sound hole with a sunburst coming out, right?
Yeah, that was his mainly his pattern he used around the sound hole. Of course, as Danny alluded to before, he had the Om symbol everywhere. On his metal front, Tony always said to him, because he had so many acoustics, on his metal front, Tony used to say, "You've got to get a metal front, George." And a couple of years before he died, George had a refurbished metal front with a rosewood fingerboard, and Danny did some lovely engraving on it. I've got some photographs of it. But the funniest thing was, on the truss rod cover, he just had G. Harrison. I thought that was a bit boring. But the other thing that George had a hand in inventing, because Tony was a bit like Leo Fender, he listened to what musicians told him. And George wanted a small guitar that he could fit in an aircraft above the seat. So Tony made him these sort of small guitars. I don't know if you've ever seen them. Have you, Rick?
I've seen the picture, and that guitar was on. They had a big display of rock and roll guitars at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who went told me, "Oh, there's George Harrison's little guitar there." So that was cool. But we also have, I have not made by Tony, but this is a ukulele that's based on, was the jig something that Tony had rigged up, or what?
No, it wasn't. If I just pop out the screen and put this guitar down. No, Tony would never make ukuleles because I asked him. So that's just that's a guitar made by a ukulele made by Dave of England. The first ukulele he made went to George Harrison. But your one's very nice. You're going to give us a little tune?
Well, 5'2", 5'2", eyes of blue. But oh, what those 5 people do! Has anybody seen my gal? Turned up nose, turned down hose, never had no other beau. Has anybody seen my gal? I've been practicing that. Well, do you have a George Formby song? You doing?
You know who this was made by?
Who was made by?
It's a person that Danny knows. It was made by John DeGay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and John, for the people who don't know, did some of the work for Tony. He used to make a few sort of bridges, and he did the cases a lot as well with the little metal things on. So he's sort of, there's a Zemaitis connection there. And when Tony passed away in August 2002, John asked Anne Zemaitis if she would mind if he did a few copies of sort of Tony's guitars. And this is obviously inspired by, even it hasn't got Zemaitis in the, hasn't got a Z, it's got a D. But yeah, it's just a bit of fun, yeah.
Well, you know, I think that it's time, and I really want Danny to chime in here too, because this is a really kind of a special story. When I first, after I saw Gareth's guitar and I started trying to learn more about Tony's work, one of the very first things that I encountered was this article here that was, let's see where we can get this in here. All right, hold on. Yep, there it is. Okay, this one here. So I'm gonna do that, get him out, put him in. You think I know what I'm doing, you know? No, I don't want that one. See, I don't know what I'm doing. All right, so here we go. So this, I saw this article that was in Guitar Players magazine about Tony, and there's a picture of George Harrison there, and there is this guitar that was in another issue that I had to track down and get a photocopy of, about a guitar called Ivan the Terrible.
Oh,
Because this has such a colorful history, I thought we'd take a little bit of time to explore that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, Ivan,
Yeah.
I just remember sort of going to Tony's, and he said that George had been round. Yeah, no, George has been round. And he wanted this massive 12-string, and he said, what can we do with it? So I've got a photograph here that don't know if you can see it. That's the headstock.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No, they were all sterling silver hearts made into flowers.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm just going to bring up. Hold on. I'm going to see if I can get there. All right. And let's see if I can get that there. Now you can see. Now you can talk, because you can see that there's the sound hole, and there is it's an illuminated. What would you call it? I can't remember what you call it.
label.
Yeah, label. That's it. That's it. My mind was like, it's
Sorry to get technical, Rick.
I know. So you said that you weren't involved. That there were two of these guitars made, and the first one you did.
It was not basically the same guitar.
Look at that. So can you talk about that, Danny? There's the engraving that Keith is holding up.
I can't see Keith anyway.
Oh, you can't see
It's the headstock. It's the headstock, Danny, with the.
It's the headstock.
Yeah, but so the whole thing was built on hearts. I think Bob Dylan called it the love box.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the decoration were hearts all around the sound hole. Were small hearts made of. Trying to think what the wood was. But
It's something like anthracite, isn't it, or something? Anthracite, is it? Or
no, not anthracite. Anyway, but he put that in that, so it's got the hearts all the way down the neck, fret markers, and all around the sound hole of these hearts, and the whole thing. Well, when you played it or when you struck it, I was lucky enough to actually see the thing before George got it, and it sounded like a church organ. It was massive.
Yeah. So it was Eric Clapton, wasn't it?
Yeah. Eric.
Yeah. Eric is the one who. Yeah. Do you have any idea why he decided to have this because it's a tremendous size, this guitar?
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was really big. Had a slimmer neck than mine. But no, I don't really know why. I think he just had this. I think he was playing with Blind Faith at the time, and I think it's on their album. He just wanted something that nobody else had got, I think.
Now I got a picture here, and I want Keith. Geez, I have too much stuff out here. Where did I put it? There. Here we go. So we're gonna bring you up over here, and I'm just gonna put you on the side just for a minute there, so that Keith can talk about the guitar and how you wrote for the description in the catalog when they were selling it for a charity, right?
yeah, that's correct. I mean, Eric asked me if I would write a few pages for one of the Christie's catalogue, because as you know, he's done 3 sales of a lot of his guitars, even the famous ones like Blackie, to raise money for his charity and the Crossroads Centre. So I dug out a picture of Dave Mason of Traffic when Derek and the Dominoes played at the Lyceum in London in '71. You can see Eric on stage, Bobby Whitlock, and you can see Dave Mason playing Ivan the Terrible. Ivan the Terrible, did you know who named him Ivan the Terrible, the guitar?
No.
It was Tony Zemaitis, what Tony told me.
Really?
But yeah, so I wrote, you know, I'm like, once you get me talking about guitars, you can't shut me up, really. So I wrote about 7 pages, and I dug out this photograph of Dave Mason playing it, and they got back in touch with me and said, did I want paying for doing it? I said, oh no, you know, it's for charity, and Eric's a member of the Zemaitis Club. So is Bobby Whitlock of Derek and the Dominoes. In fact, behind me, you can see a domino on my shelf, which Bobby sent me. But getting back to the story, I said, no, I didn't want paying. And then out of the blue, a parcel came in the post a couple of days later. And it was from Eric, and he'd signed a copy of the catalogue for me.
Look at that.
He said, get lost, Keith. You go on about guitars too much. No, it doesn't. It says, I mean, it's nice to treasure, isn't it? And I think in Cannes, Ivan went for something like £130,000.
Yeah, for charity.
Yeah, for his drug rehabilitation charity. It's really, really worthy cause. He's done 3 of those sales.
And
sold his favorite guitars.
One of the things that is really interesting also that I found is I think this, I'm going to bring this up here, take this out here. So this guitar here was a guitar that supposedly was played by Jimi Hendrix, correct?
No, supposedly about it.
Okay.
There's film evidence of him playing it.
Yeah. So this is the very guitar that was refinished, correct?
Yeah. It was rebuilt by the Dave of England, who made your ukulele you just played.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because what it was, I suppose you know, it wasn't owned by Jimmy. It was a right-handed guitar which he played upside down, and the little badge was a button that Tony got. Yeah, it's incredible, really. And Hendrix played "Hear My Train A Coming" on it. And the funny thing is, when it was restored, I was sent by the person that restored it a load of shavings from it, which I have on my wall in a frame. But I also donated some to a charity called the Boat Project. And when they had the Olympics over here in the UK, they made a boat out of all these donated bits of wood. And I went to some event and they were there. My wife was donating some block of wood she found in Cornwall. And I said to them, oh, as a matter of interest, what's the smallest piece of wood you've had? And they said, oh, I think it was a spoon that somebody donated. I said, oh, I can beat that. So I got some of Jimi Hendrix's guitar. And at first they thought it was a wind-up, but when they checked me out on the internet and things, they realized I was telling the truth. So I donated some shavings to them. And what they did was they put them in a glass capsule and put them on the tiller where they steer the boat with. The funny thing was, in all the news and all the newspapers, there was this big thing about, I think I sent you a photograph, didn't I, of a press cutting. It always mentions, this is the boat made out of 1,000 items, including Jimi Hendrix's guitar.
So I put up a picture next to the other picture of a very, very old Zemaitis guitar, and I'm going to bring back Danny to talk about this because we had talked about this offline. And so you remember this guitar, Danny?
Well, it was around. I didn't do any work on it because it was before I started working for Tony. It was when we were still discussing what we were going to do. And the only reason I can remember it is that the little button at the top is made of mother of pearl. And what Tony did was to cut in between the holes and turn it into a little Maltese cross, which is stuck on the top. And it was just a way of decorating the headstock of the guitar.
Now this gentleman here, Chris, is
Aleph.
yeah, Aleph.
Chris Aleph, yeah.
Right. So he was the one who did the illumination for Ivan the Terrible the first time, right? Is that
yeah, he did the first one. In fact, he had a guitar made by Tony, which was really quite special because it was a 6-string, but it had a tiny neck on it because Chris had quite small hands, and he had a D hole in the middle of it that you looked like somebody had thrown a brick through it.
Oh, great. Well, I'm going to see if Keith, why don't you play us a little tune on talk about the 12-string that you have there, and I am going to see if I can find. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this was made in 1980. It was a 21st birthday present for Tony's son, also called Tony, and I bought it some years ago. I used it when I played at the Royal Albert Hall with Ronnie Wood and Pete Townsend when we all did a tribute to the late great Ronnie Lane, and that's what, if you can see the signature on there. I kept bumping into Ronnie Wood in the dressing room corridors. I mean, it's like a labyrinth under the Royal Albert Hall, and I think at some point I must have turned into, as a friend of mine, Dick Dickerson says, a 14-year-old fanboy. I must have turned into him, and I got Ronnie Wood to sign it for me because he was a big influence on me in my playing. But this is the one that I played at one of Ronnie's songs on there. It's available on DVD. It's available on DVD, folks, at Macy's, Boots, Timothy White's, and Woolworths. It's a lovely sounding guitar. Danny did a special engraving of a beetle in a heart because it was made in 1980, the year that John Lennon was murdered. It's a sort of a subtle commemoration. Beautiful engraving. In fact, you haven't mentioned yet, but Danny started work as a shotgun engraver for James Purdy and Sons. Mm-hmm. They're like the Rolls Royce of shotgun makers. That's where you really, if I'm right, that's where you honed your craft, isn't it, Danny?
Yeah, I did a full apprenticeship there. I was 25 years at Purdy's before I went freelance.
Do you think 25 years is long enough to learn engraving?
I've learned a lot more since I left. Stop.
But this is a lovely sound. It's a bit like Danny said. It's got that sort of piano sound almost.
Now, I wanted to talk about this guitar because this is another guitar that's kind of very, very familiar to a lot of folks. And I don't know much about it, but I bet you do. Okay? You remember the guitar?
Donovan's Moon Hole.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Funny enough, on Facebook, I think yesterday, when I said I was doing a live stream, somebody said, "Oh, didn't Donovan play a Zemaitis?" And yeah, he's got a couple of guitars. There's a lovely story because Donovan's a member of the Zemaitis Owners Club as well. All the best people are. Danny's a member. But Donovan wrote out the story for me, and Tony made him this Moon Hole guitar, and with all stars and things. And Donovan's quite a spiritual person, and I think something went wrong with the die. And at one point, Tony rang up Donovan and said, "Oh, Don, I'm really sorry, but something's happened with the die, and it sort of turned out sort of purpley blue." And Donovan said, "Oh, no, leave it. That sounds fantastic. It was meant to be." And that's one of the guitars that people associate Donovan with. He's still got it. He's got a couple of Zemaitis guitars, but that was on the cover of his album Cosmic Wheels.
Mm-hmm.
He sent me a photograph. It's just behind me. If I can just go out of shot for a second.
Danny, do you remember the working on this guitar at all? The engraving?
I remember Tony tearing his hair out when the colour went wrong.
Yeah.
Can you see that photo?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
It's great.
at all.
He sent me a backstage pass and signed it as well, which is very nice of him.
Yeah. And what did you engrave on his shield? Did you just have his name on there, or anything special?
It's just got Donovan, I think, on the rod cover, and it's a fleur de lis style top shield, which is similar to the one you've got on your 12.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, I think we've been having too much fun here today. What did you think? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, great.
I think we should do this every day, Rick.
You know, I
And what we
Danny doesn't know this.
haven't got much to do, so
you know
Danny
this.
doesn't know this, but behind Rick, Mariana, his wife's doing that, which means
Doing yoga.
I want to do my yoga.
Well, you know, the thing is, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I had this dream for such a long time of wanting to interview both of you. And I didn't know how I was ever going to do that, you know?
Stop it, I'm welling up.
And no, seriously. And it was like when this whole idea of people doing live streams came out, and I got this opportunity to do something on this Be Live TV, I said, this is the time to do it. And with this, we were able to all get together, and we're able to share the history. And I mean, because I'm all about education. I really want people to understand the importance of the story. And because there's not a lot written about Tony compared to C.F. Martin or Fred Gretsch or a lot of different instrument makers. I thought it was important that people understand who he was and why he built these guitars and what these guitars mean to the people who have them.
yeah. Well, Tony was never a self-publicist. In fact, you know, I only ever saw one advert for Zemaitis guitars in those days, and that was one that the Faces actually put into the Melody Maker. Thank you, Tony Zemaitis, for making such wonderful guitars.
Now, you know, his legacy lives on, and both Keith was one of the reasons that I was able to get one of these guitars. See, we're twins over here.
Only your mum can tell us apart, Rick.
No, I've got Danny engraved my shield though. That's how I know it's mine.
Yeah, that's not very fair. I haven't even got a shield.
Well, you know, why don't you? You know, I first of all, I want you to, Keith, to talk about your work as a musician too, because this is really important for you folks who are watching. You have to understand that one of the reasons that we're all sitting at home and not doing shows is because of the terrible, virus that has just devastated the music industry, and has really made all of us musicians homebound. It's really hard. We don't have any gigs. It's a difficult time, and that's why I'm trying to make the best of this time by trying to celebrate our music and our music history. And Keith has been in many different bands, and I want to take this opportunity for you to talk about that, Keith.
Have we got another hour then?
No, well, you can. I'm sure you have the short version.
Yeah, I mean, the main band I started off years ago was a band called MI5, and we were signed by a record company, and we recorded a single at John Lennon's house, Ringo's house. You know, where you see Lennon playing Imagine on the piano. Ringo owned it after John, and he used to hire it out. In 1979, it was £1,000 a day, and we were in there for 2 days. Not many people got to record there. People like Jimmy Page, and there's a band called glam rock band called Slade. They recorded there. when we went in there, I found a guitar pick on the floor in the studio, and unfortunately, it didn't say John and Yoko or This Is Not Here. It said Glenn Tipton, Judas Priest. They're a heavy metal band, and funnily enough, on my website, www.keithsmart.com, I've got a photograph of this guitar pick, and I get emails from Judas Priest fans because it's from 1979. This guitar pick, and will you sell it to me? And I said, well, I can't sell it. I've got to hang on to it.
It's not yours, really.
Maybe Glenn Tipton might email me and say, I dropped a guitar pick in '79. Could I have it back, please?
Well, anybody who watches this broadcast will tell him.
Yeah, he may well be watching it.
Now,
you said my main band years ago. My current band are called St. John's Wood Affair, which is named after in the '60s there was this psychedelic band called Nirvana, not to be confused with Kurt Cobain's Nirvana. And since 1980, I've been playing guitar with them live in the studio at festivals. And they've got a song called St. John's Wood Affair, and I always thought it was a lovely name. So, we formed a band about 10 years ago called St. John's Wood Affair. We've got an album out, and it was funny, when I went and registered with Twitter, I don't know why, but one of the first people to follow the band on Twitter was Yoko Ono. And I thought, is that the real Yoko Ono? Anyway, I checked, and she had like 30 million followers, so I'm assuming it is. It's funny when you get an email from somebody like Tom Petty emailed me about something, and I always thought, is that the real Tom Petty, or is that some 15-year-old pretending to be him? You never quite know, do you?
Well, she was probably looking for that flat pick that was dropped over at you were the guy who had it.
Why don't you give us a tune on your guitar you're holding there, Rik?
Well, let's see. One of the older the problem with these live streams, as you can see, is that it's hard for the music to come out, and it's even harder to figure out how to position yourself. This is that nice 12-string sound. I'm walking with my baby down by the San Francisco Bay, where the ocean liner took us so far away. Well, it didn't mean to treat us so bad. Was the best guy I ever had. Said goodbye, wanna make me cry. I wanna lay right down and die. Well, I ain't got a nickel and I ain't got a lousy dime. If she don't come back, I think I'm gonna lose my mind. If she ever come back to stay, it'll be another brand new day. I'll be walking with my baby down by the San Francisco Bay. Well, I'm sitting out looking at my back door, wondering which way to go. Girl I love, I'm crazy about, Lord. She don't want me no more, I'm gonna hop me a freight train, 'cause I'm feeling blue. I'll ride all the way to the end of the line, thinking only you. Well, meanwhile in another city, just about to go insane. Sounds like I heard my baby the way she used to call my name. If she ever come back to stay, it'll be another brand new day. I'll be walking with my baby down by the San Francisco Bay. One more time. Walking with my baby down by the San Francisco Bay.
Yeah.
Jesse Fuller and Ramblin' Jack Elliott, my old pal. Well, Keith, why don't you sing us a song, and then we're going to have to bring this to a close. We don't want to keep going too long. What do you have for it?
I'll play a little opening of a song. See if you can guess what it is.
don't wanna leave her now. No, I believe now.
Well, I had such a wonderful time. I hope you guys did too. Thank you so much.
So,
I had a rotten time.
All right, and Danny, we dragged you out into the middle of this crazy world of live streaming. I'm so honored to have you guys here. Why don't you tell people about the Zemaitis Owners Club so that they know if they want more information, they can see things online or something like that?
Yeah, if they go on to Google and type Zemaitis Guitar Club, it'll bring up the website. We've got a every now and again, when I feel like it, magazine. Danny writes in there, writes a column. I just want to quickly find one page in here because we were talking about the inlay on George's guitar, and this is from the museum that you went to.
All right.
A friend of mine's called Kat and Bruce Frumerman. They went there and they photographed a few guitars for me, and it's in the current issue with Gary Granger on the front.
All
Gary
right.
is a fantastic guitarist. He played in the Rod Stewart Band. He's a great songwriter. He's a friend of mine. And he's also Danny's cousin. Did you know that?
Now, Danny's he's not sitting around doing nothing because he's engraving now, but you're engraving for another guitar company, correct?
well, at the moment, it's all dried up a little because of the production stuff. Yeah, I'm sort of working with this guy in America. We've done a couple, or 4 or 5, can't remember now. But
now, can people find more information about you and your engraving and things like that, Danny? Is there information out there on the web, or?
yeah, there's loads of bits and pictures and stuff on the web. You know,
Right.
just go to Google and sort of Google me.
Right. So Danny O'Brien, yeah, or maybe old-fashioned writing a letter.
Yeah.
They could track you down like we have to track down Tony. The only way I could find him actually was the label inside of Gareth's guitar had the address.
That was at the address.
They had the address. So I wrote to Tony from seeing that address in Gareth's guitar. And that was, I should, before we say goodbye, pay homage to my dear friend Gareth Hedges, because if it wasn't for Gareth, I don't think that I would have ever saw a guitar like this. So there's Gareth Hedges, and there's a guitar that started my journey, sort of with this guitar. So why don't you bring us on home with one more? Do a real song there, so we can finish it out there, Keith. One of your songs.
You're putting me on the spot here. I'd like to say hello to my granddaughter Ellie, who's watching. I can see her. Oh, is it? Oh, I can see a load of people. There's Trisha there as well, and Pete, and Kat and Bruce. You want one of my songs?
That's right. And then we're going to close it out. Go
Not
ahead.
one of your 20-minute opuses, I hope.
Don't do Alice's Restaurant.
No, I won't do any King Crimson stuff either. It's too difficult. But Bob Fripp plays it sitting down, so that helps. So I'll just play a little bit on the acoustic just for a minute, just to. I won't do any singers. It's too difficult. So see if you recognise this one. So it goes.
right.
Folks.
Well, thank you so much. Hope you had a great time. This is Rik Palieri here, and from Heinsberg, Vermont, up in the mountains, saying so long. Thank you for enjoying this. Please, this will be on Facebook Live. Share it with your friends. Let's educate people about Tony and Danny and Keith. If you hear from any of his family, please send my regards. Okay.
I will do.
All right.
Nice to see you.
Bye bye.
Cheerio from England.
All right.